Good evening, Texas bikers and bikers all across the nation. This is Texas Biker Radio number 335. My name is Mel Popeye Moss, and my co host, Mel OG Robbins. We are with you each and every week, sponsored by Sons of Liberty Riders MC and a few of our friends. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Mel Robbins because he's going to introduce our special guest tonight.
Okay, we Popeye and I talked, and we decided we needed to have an attorney on here to talk about all of this profiling that's been going on. It's getting pretty prolific and scary as hell out there. So we have invited today to be with us an attorney. His business name is William Smith Attorney. He goes by Bill Smith. He comes to a lot of COC meetings, not just in our region, but other regions, and he will stand up and he will spend a lot of his own time talking with us about what our rights are and what to do if you get stopped. Bill handles a lot of motorcycle accidents, biker issues, profiling issues. He's pretty generic when it comes to what he can do for the biker community. So, Bill, I want to welcome you on, and let's get going with this profiling stuff. And of
thank
course,
you.
I'd like you to give us your phone number later, so the guys out there can call you if they need you.
Thank you. Glad to be here. My phone number, 214-969-0909. And my email address is wsmith@wasmithlaw.com. So they can mail me as well.
Cool.
Now, in terms of profiling, we've been hearing more and more incidents of profiling. And it's obvious that they're doing this, stopping bikers in order to gather intelligence. Why else would a gang unit be on a traffic stop for failing to signal a lane change? So I wanted to talk a little bit about what the bikers' and citizens' rights are, generally speaking, when it comes to interaction with law enforcement. First of all, some states are stop and ID, which means if you're walking down the street, the cop pulls up and says, "Let me see your ID," you have to show it, or it's a criminal offense and they can arrest you. Texas is not, I repeat, is not a stop and ID state. The Texas Penal Code 38.02 provides that a person commits an offense if he intentionally refuses to give his name, residence address, or date of birth to a peace officer who has lawfully arrested the person and requested the information. That means if you're a passenger in a vehicle or you're walking down the street and a cop rolls up and says, "Let me see your ID," legally, you do not have to identify yourself. Now, typically, and I would suggest that if someone law enforcement asks for the ID, am I being detained? Which is an important concept, as we'll talk about a little bit later. And they'll say, why would you ask? Why do you think I would detain you? Or possibly, yes, I'm detaining you. For what? Because he can only detain you for purposes of investigating if a crime has been committed and you've committed the crime. Well, you're a suspicious person. It's dark out and you're walking down the street. What statute, what law prevents me from walking down the street when it's dark out? Give me the statute. Tell me what law you suspect me of violating. And of course, then they'll ask for your ID. And again, if you're a passenger in a vehicle, if you're walking down the street, if you're in Cowtown, and you're not under arrest, you don't have to to show them your ID. You can say, I refuse to talk to you. I invoke my rights, Fifth Amendment rights. I'm not going to talk to you. You can also ask many times, if you're starting to feel uncomfortable, he starts to get aggressive, ask for a supervisor. Because you have rights, you do not have to identify yourself. Also, am I under arrest? That's another key word. If you are under arrest, you must show your ID or at least identify yourself, who you are, your name, address. And if you don't have ID on you and you are under arrest, do not give them a fake name, the name of your brother or a cousin or somebody else, because that in itself is a criminal offense. So the point is, you have to assert your rights. If you don't assert them, you waive them. We've seen some videotape, some interaction between law enforcement and bikers where they answered all of the questions the cop was asking. How many club members? Is it a new club? Is it a big club? Is it a small club, etc.? You do not have to answer those questions. That is your right. Now, we've also seen some video of stops. Cops stop someone for basically a bogus infraction, failing to use turn signal when changing lanes, etc. And those are considered lawful stops. If you've committed a traffic violation, they can stop you, and you have to show them your driver's license. Or if you don't have it with you, you can give them the name and address, they can pull it up. But at least you have to identify yourself. There's a Supreme Court case a few years ago, Rodriguez versus United States. The court said the fundamental mission of a traffic stop is ensuring that vehicles on the road are operated safely and responsibly. So that's why they can ask for your license, your registration, your proof of insurance. They can check for outstanding warrants. But because the court said because addressing the infraction is the purpose of that stop, because you are being detained. You're not allowed to travel freely. You're being detained. It may last no longer than is necessary to effectuate that purpose. Authority for the seizure thus ends when tasks tied to the traffic infraction are or reasonably should have been completed. In Rodriguez, Nebraska trooper pulled someone over for crossing the line, and the driver, it was late at night, I think he was going, east on 80. Anyway, he was stopped, crossed the line, asked for his license, registration, etc., wrote him a ticket. Well, this cop also had a drug-sniffing dog in his vehicle. So after giving him the ticket, his license back and everything, he said, I'm going to walk around the vehicle, which he did. The dog hit. They searched it. He's got drugs. You're under arrest. Long story short, he was convicted on appeal to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. Conviction upheld, went to the U.S. Supreme Court. Supreme Court said it was illegal, improper, to keep him longer than necessary for the traffic stop without some articulable suspicion that he was committing a crime. For example, if he stops you for a simple traffic violation, you're in a vehicle, you roll down your window, and he smells what he believes to be alcohol, or he smells weed. That is articulable suspicion to delay the stop, or to prolong it, I should say. But if you're just driving home from work, you haven't been drinking, nothing of that nature, stops you, he can't delay you longer than necessary to effectuate the purpose of that stop. Now, we've seen some video recently where someone was stopped for speeding, produced his license, proof of insurance. Cop went back to the car, came back and said, hey, go down the street, take a right, etc., etc. He did. 2 more cars pulled up, gang unit, made him put his hands on his head, get off the bike, searched his bags without consent, and wrote him a ticket and let him go. That was clearly a situation where the driver was being detained longer than necessary to effectuate the purpose of the stop. That was a violation of his rights. And of course, he gave him the ticket after the gang squad had already done what they needed to do. And that's one thing you'll see. I think cops are starting to get smart and give the ticket after everything else has been taken care of, although that was longer than necessary for the actual stop. So, the point is, I think people need to do 2 things. They need to videotape the stop from beginning till end in order to document the purpose of the stop, the duration of the stop, and what occurred during the stop. Number 2, I think if you believe your rights have been violated, you need to file a complaint with the police department, internal affairs, because one stop, like we saw in the video recently, is not going to be enough to persuade a court necessarily, or the time and money to pursue that. But if you start building up a file of consistent, repeated misconduct, it's going to be hard for the department to say, well, that was just a one-off, or what have you. So I think it's important that people step up and actually enforce the rights, push back in a very legal way. And one way to begin the process is to start filing complaints. Lastly, if they say, do you mind if I search your bags or your trunk or your vehicle? Tell them, yes, I do mind. No, you may not search without a warrant. They don't actually have to get a warrant, but they do have to have articulable suspicion to call the dogs if they suspect drug activity. And if they say, if you don't give me consent, I'm going to call the canine. You can say, what is your articulable suspicion that I have committed a crime? What facts do you believe warrant calling the dog? And get them on the tape before they had a chance to think about it. Well, we have a lot of drug traffic on this highway. Well, that's not good enough. You have to have articulable suspicion that this person who is being detained for a traffic stop has, or is about to commit a crime. They can't just say, we have a lot of drugs in the area. There have been many cases where someone at night in an area where police believe there's a lot of drug activity, pull people over, get them out of their cars, search them. Courts have thrown out those searches because you have to have articulable suspicion that this person who is being detained has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a crime. So that's my advice for your audience.
Mel, wow, Mel. Yeah, you want to start or you want me to? Well, Bill, I can't wait to ask you these questions because we had a recent video that popped up with the Countryman MC in in Garland, where that police officer actually admitted he was profiling those young men because of what they were wearing. I mean, what do you think when you hear of that?
I think he needs to file a complaint. I also, at our COC meeting on Sunday, talked to someone who has an audio recording with a
Yes.
different police department. It's the Allen Police Department. It's a duty sergeant who said that, and he received a ticket for registration that was out of date. And he asked the duty sergeant why. He goes, "We're gathering intelligence." Why did he take pictures? Why did he ask all the questions? It's a simple registration. He says,
Yeah.
"We're gathering intelligence on bikers.
Yeah.
We're gathering intelligence."
Okay.
And that's another thing too. It comes to mind. You don't have to cooperate to show them your tattoos or roll up your sleeves or what have you. You haven't done anything wrong. You have no requirement, and you can take the Fifth Amendment.
Exactly.
Okay, so basically, if I'm hearing what you're saying, Bill, because we get a lot of comments about, well, you ought to take them to court, you ought to sue, but basically, what you're saying to us is we need to start building an archive and database of all these different scenarios that are occurring, and especially if you get a department that is repetitive in their violations of our rights. Once we build this database at a point, you might say to an individual that's had their rights violated, okay, I think we got enough to go to court here.
Yeah, and we could do it on behalf of all those who filed internal affairs complaints or filed complaints or stops. Even if they didn't file a complaint, we have you call it a database, but you have situations where it's repeated, because so often the command staff will go, "Well, we didn't know that. There's no standing order." Well, there may not be a standing order, but those internal affairs complaints come across your desk.
Exactly.
They come across your desk. So you can't stick your head in the sand and say, "We didn't know."
Exactly.
And for a knowing violation like that, the court's going to be more harsh, at least in my opinion. When it's a repeated, consistent violation.
Bill.
Now, is there a point where we can go to the state, or do you keep this local with the local police departments?
I think you need to keep it local with the local police departments, because the state's not going to be involved unless they believe there's criminal activity in a police department.
Okay.
It has to be investigated. These are civil complaints. These are violation of one's civil rights under 28 U.S.C. 1983. And unless it's more criminal in nature, the state, I think, would not get involved. And especially in Texas with the administration we have, I wouldn't be surprised if the order came down on high to start gathering intelligence. So I doubt if they would do anything, or they'd give the agency a heads up and they'd change some of the way they're doing things.
Well,
So I think that if you have a half dozen violations in Garland or a half dozen in Fort Worth or Dallas or more, that you have built or are building a better case that these violations are consistent, they're repeated, and unless the court intercedes, they will continue.
Yes, and Bill, let me say this, and because I do think the stuff is coming from up high, and the fact is that this has gone beyond the scope of what it was intended. This is now going on to bikers that, motorcycle ministries, other motorcycle clubs, your average day mom and pop club, and bikers that are members of no clubs. This is what's happening. Right. And it's gone beyond the scope. And what happens if we all decide we're not going to wear any cuts for the next 2 or 3 months? Where are they at then? They're going to be stopping just anybody on 2 wheels? I mean, the chances are high that Mel and I, who have had security clearances, who have had high security clearances and everything else, that we could make it into one of these gang databases. And, we're not criminals, but we can make it into that based on what the data that they're collecting just willy-nilly when they say, hey, if we're going to stop you for what you're wearing, and we're going to stop you, if you're going to play the part. Well, play the part of what? I mean, this is where we're at now.
And it can affect one's livelihood if you're in a database and you're being considered for a position that requires certain clearances.
Yes.
I know one guy down in San Antonio that works with an aircraft manufacturer, and they recondition and help reposition planes. And one time, one of the planes that fly with the United States president was down there for a reason, and he has a very high security clearance.
Mm-hmm.
He had to be escorted to the plane by security.
Yeah.
Now, if he doesn't have or loses his security clearance, he can't do his job.
Exactly.
And he's a member of a club, and I am quite sure now he's in a database.
Yeah. Because of the way they're collecting data, and it's my opinion that the data is collected by biased people who have an agenda, and not whether it be a monetary agenda or a promotional type agenda, whatever. Their job is to keep the hype up, to keep it going.
Right. Now, there is a problem in the collection of data. We have 5 to 7 fusion centers in Texas that's supposed to collect and gather data on those who may commit crimes, terrorists, things like that. And there is a statute that says someone has the right to inquire if they're in the database. And they have to either tell you they are, and if you are, you can file suit to have them delete your name. You don't get to see your file, but the court will examine it. And if you haven't been convicted of a felony or under suspicion of criminal activity within, I want to say, 5 years of your inclusion, they have to delete your name and data from the Fusion Center database. Now, part of the problem is Garland may not, and it also has to follow, these fusion centers have to follow federal guidelines.
Right.
Garland may keep its own database. It may
Exactly.
have a gang unit that doesn't participate in any of the fusion center databases. In which case, possibly on purpose, but I know there's a couple in North Texas, and we can start educating people on how to request if they're in the Fusion Center database.
Exactly.
And then if they are, and they have not committed a crime, I think it's 5 years from the date of inclusion in the database,
mm-hmm.
or under criminal investigation, they can, theoretically at least, cause their name and data to be deleted. Now, I don't know if it's like the internet, nothing is ever deleted once it's posted online, but at least there's an avenue to challenge that.
You know,
Now, I think we also on Sunday, when you were at the COC meeting, discussed that given the activities, the current activities of law enforcement in trying to get as much information as they can from you and search you by any means possible, the fact that they're now starting to actively ask for your registration, insurance certificate, or proof of insurance, a lot of us have normally in the past just carried those in our saddlebags. And we brought up the point that if you open up that saddlebag, you have just opened Pandora's box for law enforcement.
Right. It's called plain view. If the illegal object, whether it's a handgun, bag of weed, pills, whatever it may be, is in plain view of the police officer because you've opened your saddlebag, you got a problem. He doesn't need a warrant. Doesn't have to worry about articulable suspicion to bring in the canine. He can say it was in plain view. Just like if officer stops someone, they're not supposed to have a handgun, maybe they've got a felony conviction, etc., and the cop looks into the car and sees a handgun protruding from under the front seat, you got a problem. So, yes, I agree. I suggest that everyone keep license, registration, proof of insurance on your person, in your wallet, in your cut. Keep it somewhere that's readily accessible and it would not expose what you have in your vehicle to plain view if there's a cop standing there with a flashlight. Because you know he's going to look. If you open your saddlebag, you know he's going to shine the light in there. And it's not to help you get what you're looking for. It's not to get...
Or he's going to think he saw.
I think they're going to claim they saw something.
He's going to think he saw it.
And they may. And that's why if you keep it locked, you don't have to go in there. You know, you can say no.
To be honest with you, I have even stopped carrying a pocket knife because of all the crap I've heard that they put you through if you've even got a pocket knife in your front pocket. Now,
well, the stop we saw the other night, he said he had 2 pocket knives, 1 in each pocket. But notice that he wasn't arrested for an illegal weapon. He just happened to have a pocket knife. And it's, hell, if you can carry a samurai sword down the street, you should be able to have a pocket knife in your pocket.
Yeah, my thought is I just didn't want to leave myself open to anything.
Sure.
But by the same token, my spirit tells me I ought to be in their face with at least a pocket knife. But am I setting myself up for something?
Well, keep in mind that just because you have a pocket knife doesn't mean they can search your saddlebag. That doesn't give them. And the officer may ask for the pocket knife out of or for his own security. He may. It's dark, lonely country road, and he may say, "Let me have it." Okay, you can reach in, give it to him. Fine, but you're not going in your saddlebag.
Right.
And that does not give him articulable suspicion that something in your saddlebag is illegal. If you say, I got a pocket knife in my left front pocket, he says, let me have it. That's removed any threat to him.
Right.
So,
Right, we're getting that. We're getting that. You know, Bill, they're putting people in danger in so many different ways. Now, I was glad to see that officer in Fort Worth the other night, that sheriff, I think it was a sheriff's deputy, actually take him off the highway and onto a safer spot. We've been bitching about that for quite a while because of all the fatalities that have happened in and around the Metroplex area where drunk drivers have actually hit people on the side of the road. And we just think that's an accident waiting to happen when they stop bikers and keep them on the side of the road for an hour or hours, and
Right.
and also at the same time on a busy road. It doesn't necessarily have to be a highway. But I was glad to see that officer do that. I hope that spreads because we have been complaining about it, and we know they watch our stuff. We don't give a damn. We're just telling the truth. And so maybe at some point we can come to an understanding of what's going on. We know why it is, but at the same time, we want, it's gone beyond the scope.
Well, and just because he lights you up, doesn't mean you have to pull over that moment. I mean, you can drive down to the first exit.
Right.
You can drive, or you can turn into a parking lot on a busy highway, as long as he knows that you're not trying to run.
Right.
You can signal him, put on your turn signal and with your arm let him know that you're pulling over. And if you're on a bike, it's not like you're trying to hide something in your saddlebag.
Exactly.
He'll see it if you're trying to get to your saddlebag.
Or have a sex slave on the back. Just saying.
Do I know?
I said, or have a sex slave on the back of your bike.
Yeah, there you
I'm
go.
just being facetious.
Well, here's another thing. What's with the bit where they're not letting these guys put their kickstands down?
Oh, gosh.
I can understand you don't dismount until you're told to. But, I, for one, would not care to be sitting there straddling a 900-pound bike with my hands on my helmet, trying to keep the damn thing upright while they're searching me.
I would just tell them. I mean, there are some people who it's difficult for an extended period of time to do that. You can just tell the officer, I'm not physically capable. Tell them why. I'm not physically capable of holding this bike up indefinitely, this 900-pound bike up indefinitely. Or I'm not capable of putting the kickstand down and getting off on the right side.
Exactly.
Maybe you got a bad knee.
Yeah.
Maybe some guys are pretty good sized guys, and they play hell trying to get off on the right side with the kickstand down.
Yeah, Bill, that's exactly what happened to the Vagos MC member when he couldn't get his arm high enough that the Sergeant Steroid pulled a gun on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
tell him I can't.
Yeah.
So I can't physically raise it any higher. I have a shoulder injury.
Absolutely
I'm not
incredible.
arguing with you. I'm physically incapable of following your instructions.
Right. Right. Well, we're certainly going to let it be known that that these are problems, and I've got the as I showed you the other day, Bill. I've got my request for the body cams from Ellis County and the Maraza MC incident, and I'm going to send in my money to get my DVD. And we'll be taking a look at that and see what we see from the body cam videos. That'll be interesting. And then we're going to be doing the same thing with Garland. Although, Bill, when I go to the Garland Police Department's deal, they don't have a deal there where you can request the Freedom of Information Act request. They don't have anything on that site. Do I need to go to the county? Who keeps that?
You say when you go to Garland, they don't have an area or a form you can request?
Right.
Well, if you go to take a letter to the duty sergeant, he's required to pass it on to the correct department.
I'll do that.
Or direct you to the correct department.
Right.
Now, some of them have an online ability to request because they get enough they don't want to occupy or keep one or more officers occupied
Right.
for an extended period of time, all day, just to handle these requests so you can submit them online.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you're going to file an internal affairs complaint because what you believe to be an illegal stop or detention longer than necessary for the stop, they're going to want your name and address and everything else, and but they will have it if they have video recording. So I'd request the video recording before you file the internal affairs complaint.
Right. Right.
And look at it, and then objectively, and then decide if it warrants a internal affairs complaint.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the stop the other night. Officer who stopped him for a traffic violation. He didn't put his hands on his head. He didn't make him put his kickstand down and get off on the right side. Didn't search him for weapons. I mean, that was the gang unit.
Yes. Yes. That's exactly right. I would have thought. Go ahead, Mel.
We've seen some stops where they allege that one individual, where there's like a club going down the road with 5 to 10 bikes, 15,
Mm-hmm.
and they allege that one of the riders had a violation and they made a wide turn, failed to signal to change lanes or whatever, and they pulled the whole group over.
If I were one of the bikers and you didn't want to leave, I know a lot of guys would say, no, I'm not going to leave my club brother on the side of the road with the cops. But unless you're being detained for a specific reason, if everybody in the club turned wide or everybody in the club failed to use their signal, he might be able to stop everyone in the club. But unless you've committed a traffic violation, he has no reason to stop you.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
You could be driving down the street. He can't just pull people over because he doesn't like the way they look, or because they're a member of a club, or riding a motorcycle as opposed to driving an automobile. So,
if I'm right, they just did that.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, and I'm sure you are right, and I'm saying that if you got 6 guys riding together and they pull one of them over for a traffic violation, the others don't have to stop unless the cop asks. And then if he does, or he points everyone over to the side, or however he does it, am I being detained? Am I being detained? Yes. For what? And I would insist on a reason. And if he doesn't give you a reason, am I free to go? And if he still doesn't give you a reason, you can say, I will take your silence as that I'm free to go, unless you say otherwise. You got to make them answer your question. You don't have to be, you don't have to get ugly about it, but you want an answer to your question. If he says, no, you're not being detained, am I free to go? He says, no, you're not. That means I am being detained. Why am I being detained? What violation do you allege I committed?
Right. Mel,
because again, in Texas, you don't have to identify yourself unless you're under arrest. And they can't detain you unless they have articulable suspicion that you have, are, or about to committed a crime. And that's why if they stop you for a traffic offense, they can't go beyond that unless they have articulable suspicion.
Yeah, I think they're just using a lot of intimidation out there right
now. Yeah, they are. They're bullying.
Well, they are. And I think you have to respond, I wouldn't say in kind, but you have to be very direct. You have to let them know you know your rights, and you're not going to let them violate your rights. There was a recent case where, it's a long story, I won't go into details, but the guy didn't unequivocally say, I have a right to my attorney, I'm not going to talk to you. And they said, well, he talked, but he didn't unequivocally state he wanted his rights followed. So that's a red flag. I think he may have said, well, my family, I think, has a lawyer, or, we have a lawyer or something. He didn't say, I want to see my lawyer, and I'm not going to talk to you.
Right.
He just kept talking. It's the old joke, Ron White. Long story, he's in New York, and the comedian, he stopped by the police, and he said, Ron White says, the problem is I had the right to remain silent, but I didn't have the ability.
Yeah.
Because he was drunk.
Right.
So you have the right, but you have to have the ability to express your rights.
You guys, I brought up the other day that I think it was the Garland gang officer did not have a name tag on, and when I asked what his name was, the guys didn't know, and I would suggest that everybody that's getting film ask the officer's name, ask him to identify himself. So
a name and badge number.
Yes. Yes.
Always insist on it.
Yes.
Insist on it.
Get that into your video.
And I'd be suspect if they don't have a name badge. Now, they may argue the gang unit doesn't have a name badge for their own protection and security because they deal with bad people. And they don't want bad people following them home or knowing where they live. Hey, that's silly. I mean, if you arrest someone, they're going to know his name and his badge number and all the other information. So,
I would suggest if that's their job, they find another line of work. If they're worried about that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. It's a lot to soak in, and there's so much going on. And we can't stress to everybody, if you've got a video, if you've got an audio, get it to us so we can get it archived. We are going to take some action here at some point. We need your videos and audio. Whether you think it's good or not, maybe you think, well, that's not very good quality, I didn't get very much. Send it to us anyway. Send it to us anyway. And if you're reluctant to request the body cams of the police officers, write down the details, get it to us. We will do it for you through Texas Biker Radio News.
And I would add that archive will always be available to the biker community.
Yes.
And any of their legal representation that needed.
Exactly. So we've got hundreds of videos that we've had stored for years that we were ready to use in the Waco saga, and those videos are still there. So this is what we do.
Well, as you know, several years ago, the Fusion Center bill, there was a bill to amend the Fusion Center authorization to prevent certain people from being included in the database unnecessarily. And we had recorded a stop down in Round Rock with a trooper. The guy was a veteran, retired military, not a blemish on his record, driving record, service record, anything. Stopped him, traffic violation. He was wearing a cut. I think it was a military club, I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly which club, but long story short, at the end of the stop, trooper said, I have to fill out this I-9 because we're going to put you in the database. So that was shown to the Senate committee that was considering an amendment to the Fusion Center bill. And it almost brought the Senate committee members to tears to think that a veteran, unblemished record, traffic violation was now going to be in the Fusion Center database.
Right.
So videos eliminate the he said.
Right.
Everybody can see them. They're objective. So got to have video.
Exactly. And you guys, we are closing in on our allotted amount of time for tonight. Mel, we will be back at it again later on this week, as we've got a request from a Mirasa club member that wants to come on to our podcast and talk about their latest stop and what went on with them. Absolutely incredible story to hear. You guys join us. That will be a special later on this week. Bill, I want to thank you for joining us tonight, and you're giving us so much information, so much to soak in. And you know, it's really neat that anybody that listens to this can now listen to it over and over and over until they've got it. They know what to do. They need to stay calm when they're stopped, and they need to get video. Last comments, guys.
Yeah. And if they have any questions, specific questions, they can email me, and I'll try to answer their questions by email. If I can't answer them, I'll try to point them in the right direction. And if they need any help, they've gone down, they've been injured in an accident, please give me a call, and we'll do everything we can to help you.
There you go. Mel?
No, I will attest to the fact that Bill has done some work for me personally, and he is just awesome. Trust me, he is very eclectic. There's very little he can't do for you. So I just say the guy's great. If you need him, call him. You will not regret it.
Exactly.
Thanks, Mel, and your check will be in the mail.
I'm waiting with anticipation.
Really. And you
I
guys,
didn't say how much it would be.
yeah.
Right.
And you guys, this is Texas Biker Radio, and my name is Mel Popeye Moss. My co-host, Mel O.G. Robbins. We are constitutional activists, and we are working for you. Good evening, bikers, and ride safe.
Good night, everyone.